Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to our channel and thanks for logging on. Today we're discussing the Vacheron Constantin Overseas Chronograph, second generation in stainless steel. You can see this beautiful blue lacquer dial overseas chronograph and purchase it on our website. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you enjoy these videos, and please click on the card in the upper right hand corner of the screen at any time during this video to see our full commercial listing for this watch with accessories included in the sale, high resolution images, and naturally complete pricing for this watch. Now on my wrist, 6 1/3 inches, 16 centimeters in circumference, you can see that the watch has impressive stance, but it's not overwhelming to a smaller wrist like mine. Now across the broad of the case, that is lug to lug, you find the watch's largest single dimension, and that's 51 millimeters. I'll show you in a moment how the curve of the bracelet and the flexibility of the bracelet helps to minimize the size for those with smaller wrists. But first I want to emphasize just how thin the watch is. Despite its complexity and its sporting bent and 150 meter water resistance, you'll note the watch is only 12 millimeters thick, and that with a generously sloped Maltese cross-style bezel, it easily slides underneath a dress cuff, so this is a real two-way player for business suits and bathing suits. Now across the broad of the case, 42.5 millimeters, that's the distance from 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock, not inclusive of the crown or crown guards, nor of the chronograph pushers. Now the watch does have impressive heft. There's a solid case back, there's a soft iron inner case around the movement for anti-magnetic properties, and then the bracelet is exceptionally substantial. First, the ergonomics that I mentioned. You can see this bracelet pulls straight down around the tight curve of a small wrist. Unlike many bracelets with solid end links, this one doesn't have any tendency to flare and fight the curve of your wrist. So I would say, though my wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference, this watch could be worn on a wrist down to 14 to 14.5 centimeters in circumference with security and the appearance of proportion. Now the bracelet is everything you would expect first in this class of sports watch, competitive with the Patek Philippe Nautilus and the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, but also from what you would expect given Vacheron's own track record. So not just well made, but with beauty to it and elegance. You can see that in the recurring Maltese cross theme of the center joinery. You can also see the complexity of each individual link, faceted, alternately polished, and satin finished. You can see the gorgeous polished bevel of the flanks of the bracelet, and when you run your fingers down it, you can't feel the step even though visually you can see the taper. That's the degree of tolerances. You can also see that on the underside there are good channels between the links, so this doesn't have the tendency to pinch skin or pull hair that can turn enthusiasts against some bracelet sports watches. Moreover, the clasp is extremely solid and, as you'll note, completely finished. Not a single milled bird or unfinished stamped assembly in this entire clasp. It's beautifully made, and it's also wonderfully secure, with a low profile such that when closed, it's not as susceptible to desk diving damage as conventional oversized sports watch clasps. And of course, with twin trigger release, you really do have to actively release it. It can't accidentally pop open. Now on the case back, you'll see the fully rigged ship, a tribute to Francois Constantin's early 19th century trip to the United States and Canada, that North American leg helping to establish VC's strength in that market despite the distance and the span of ocean, and thus the tribute paid on the caseback. Remember, behind this caseback, there is an iron inner core that protects the movement from magnetism up to 25,000 ampere per meter. And remember, the ISO definition of an anti-magnetic watch is protection from 4,800 amperes per meter, so far more than the standard, plus 150 meter water resistance with screw-down crowns and pushers. That's robustly more than either the Nautilus or the Royal Oak. You'll also note the handsome finish of the metal on the case, a beautiful polished bevel about the flank. You'll also note beautifully polished on the flanks, but satin finished on the top, with a handsome polished Maltese cross bezel that's minimized to open up the dial. Now, the dial has depth, detail, and a calculated asymmetry that makes it both becoming and more functional. You can see that there's a sloping rayhaut that doubles as the seconds track for the chronograph seconds hand. Moving inboard, large white gold and polished hour indices with abundant lume. This is an easy watch to see in low or no light conditions. A beautiful polished chaptering to each of the sub-registers. Now here's where the asymmetry comes in. You can see that the minute register at 3 o'clock is far larger than its counterparts, with the constant seconds at 6 being the most marginalized in terms of size. This makes it easier to read the most most pertinent information of the chronograph. Moreover, you'll note the well-loved double-digit grand date at 12 o'clock, a feature lost and already lamented in the arrival of the third generation Overseas in 2016. There is a quick set function for the date. It is handsome, it is readable, it's functional, and unfortunately in the latest version of the watch it is gone. And this timepiece, especially in its full bracelet blue dial variant, is already being regarded as a modern classic. Now you can see the handsome knurling of the crowns and the chronograph pushers, and they're incredibly easy to use. It's easy to get a purchase on them. Vacheron didn't build up the crown guards to ridiculous heights, so even with wet or gloved hands, it's easy to access all of the primary functions of the watch. The caliber inside is Vacheron's caliber 1137. It's based on a Frédéric Piguet 1185 with the addition of Vacheron Constantin's Grand Date module. It features a 40-hour power reserve, automatic winding, a 3 Hz beat rate, a vertical clutch chronograph function selector, well, I should say a vertical clutch engagement and a column wheel function selector, and you'll note the advantage of the vertical clutch being a smooth start, but also the ability to run the chronograph full time with no hazard to the movement. The vertical clutch gives you crisp actuation such that you can feel and enjoy the tactile pleasure of a more precise traditional chronograph architecture. And of course, originating from Frédéric Piguet, it is both an exceptionally sophisticated and exceptionally thin caliber. Like the Grand Date, it's already being missed in the latest iteration of the Overseas. You can see and you can purchase the second generation Vacheron Constantin Overseas Chronograph on our website.